On October 7th, 1952, the Sahara Hotel, known as the Jewel of the Desert, was opened by Milton Prell as the sixth lady of the Strip. It had 240 rooms and a casino that had a $1.50 dinner and a 10-cent cup of coffee. It has now become one of the most famous and well-known resorts in all of Vegas. In the last 50 years, a lot has changed. The Congo Room and Casbah Theater, they had such acts as Johnny Carson, George Burns, the one and only Liza Minnelli, Buddy Hackett, to name a few. Many celebrities like Cary Grant, Grace Kelly, Spencer Tracy, even Elvis Presley stayed there when they visited Vegas. When the Rat Pack wrapped up a show at the Sands, they'd head over to Sahara's House of the Lords restaurant about 1 in the morning, where they generally dropped off a $1,000 tip to all the Goombas and waiters. Now that the days of the Rat Pack have passed, Vegas and the Sahara have changed. But rest assured, you'll be able to get a comfortable room and a place to take a dip. The Sahara Hotel Casino continues to be a link to the Vegas past while visiting the Vegas present.
The first thing one thinks of, it was very much smaller and much more intimate. They had a very nice little lounge there as well, because I remember after the show had finished, you could go in this lounge where the Bob Sims trio used to play and have a drink there, and Sinatra would be at the next table, and Count Basie and Dean Martin, and you'd just run into people like that all the time. They were there, they were around you all the time because you went to the same places, and they always had a wonderful atmosphere. Wherever they were, you kind of felt someone was there. Like when Sinatra walked into a room, I mean, you kind of knew that room had been walked into, so to speak. They had such an air about them, and yet it was very warm, and you all worked together like a family. They knew you worked here. It didn't matter in what capacity, you know. Everyone was very friendly and very warm, and it was a very nice atmosphere.
It was very exciting. The celebrities were there. The Rat Pack was around the Sands all the time. Little did I know that 22 years later, I'd end up buying the Sands. I mean, I could never imagine that. It was truly, truly luxurious and decadent. I remember going into a restaurant. I think the steaks were $1.99 or 99 cents at the time. It reminded me of the Durgan Park restaurant in Boston, where every piece of meat fell over the sides of the dish, of the plate. It was just overflowing with a steak so big that it'd be enough for 3 or 4 people. Do you know, one time there were no TVs in the rooms in Las Vegas, because the thinking was that if you had TVs in the room, people wouldn't go to the casino, because everything you had to go through the casino for. To get to the business center, to get to the safe, or to where they had safes at the front desk or at the casino cage, the cashier's cage in the casino. Or if you wanted to get a snack, you had to go to the snack bar or the coffee shop. I mean, nobody ever imagined. We're the only hotel in Las Vegas today that has mini bars in the rooms.
Sinatra I met many times. I was fortunate to know, me being in his company many times. His accompanist, Bill Miller, was a close friend of mine for many years. So the first time I met them was at the Sands when they were appearing there with Basie. And that was in 1966. So since then, I've had the pleasure of being in Sinatra's company many times. Dean Martin I met, he was a love. And Sammy Davis was tremendous. I mean, he used to like our show, and he saw our show when he'd finished his one night and invited the whole company to have supper with him afterwards, and took the whole cast, you know. And he spoke with everyone in the company. He came around to each person and made you feel part of it, you know. It was like a family. We were like a family in those days.
Where we're sitting right now is in a replica of the Regency Room, which is the most famous, one of the most famous gourmet rooms in Las Vegas of its time, which was the gourmet room of the Sands Hotel Casino. And this room was put together as a replica of the original Ocean's 11 Regency Room. I mean, you can always see the celebrities, the movie actors, the singers, the entertainment people walking around Las Vegas, and the Sands was their home.
I miss the elegance. You don't see the elegance that there used to be, either in, well, the restaurants are beautiful now. They're very much larger than they were then. They were much more intimate. But they were very elegant, and they had very nice lounges with groups and piano bars where people could just sit and relax. And even like late at night, when I worked in the shows and got off at 2 in the morning, or one time I was doing 3 shows a night, we got off at 4, there was always some place to go to. It was an occasion when you went out. Everyone dressed. We went to work in the shows, and we went in and out through the stage doors, of course, but we always wore like a nice cocktail dress and heels, and because everyone dressed like that. If we'd have dressed like they dress now, we'd have stuck out like a sore thumb, and it wouldn't have been too welcome.
What I remember about the Sands was the wild and woolly days of the luxurious, decadent old Las Vegas. Luxury, richness, decadence, beyond the ordinary, everyday way of life. Today, the Venetian is truly a luxurious, artistic, soon-to-be very cultural resort that's all-encompassing. Las Vegas has redefined the meaning of the word entertainment.
I was a dancer at the Tropicana. I worked there doing all their production shows until they brought in the Folies Bergère. Right after the Follies, I had to work, so I went in and I became a dealer. I went to school for it and became a dealer. I stayed with that. I worked in 3 years downtown, and I went into the Desert Inn in 1961 as a dealer, and I closed there in year 2000. Ironically enough, being real Southwestern, we were Western, really, and it was like the El Rancho and etc. The hotels were all small and really separated when you stop to think about it. Invariably, in a hotel, you'd see a celebrity. They didn't mingle, they just associated with people. If they were performing there, well, they ate there, and they walked around there, they shook hands, they used the pool, whatever. Consequently, you got to meet all of the performers there at one time or another. You didn't go out always every night, you know, but I did have the opportunity of going one time and seeing the show. But when you went to see their show, you went to see, let's just say, Sammy Davis. And you were treated because Mr. Sinatra got there, Mr. Bishop came there, Mr. Martin got there, and sitting in the audience would be John Wayne, it would be so-and-so and so on, and everybody, the audience, the performers, it was just one solid unit. It was just right close by. The rooms weren't gigantic to begin with. They held 400, 500, 600 people. Sometimes today when you go to the theater, it's got 5,000 people. You don't even see a person's face from where you're sitting. But their shows were intimate, and you felt like you were part of it. They talked to you. They sang to you. They told you jokes. They put you on the inside of things. Did you know so-and-so did such and such? You got to laugh at that. They were thoroughly entertaining, everything about them. And it wasn't all visual. It was, you heard it, you enjoyed it, it was music, it was laughter. It was just wasn't fireworks and blazing lights. There's no other place in the world like Las Vegas. It has everything. We of the 5, 6 decades ago never envisioned anything like this, really. There were some who did, obviously. It's magnificent. It's just that it deals to the multitudes today, whereas we dealt to the individuals and small groups at that time. I just think there's no other city like Las Vegas, but it wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the Flamingo, the El Rancho, and the Desert Inn. The Flamingo was probably, obviously in 1946 they built it, but it was the most elegant, with all more neon than the others. The others were relatively plain, Western style, old frontier, El Rancho, etc.
I started in '67 at the Frontier, and I worked there for a year, and then I went to Circus and opened that for a year, and then I went to the Flamingo in 1969 and have been there ever since. To work at the Flamingo in the 60s, the hotel was a lot smaller than it is now. It had one casino, now we have two. When I first started working there in 1969, there were 1421 games. Now, I'm assuming there's over 60. There were very few slot machines. Today we have slot machines are all over. Slot machines are a lot more popular than they used to be. As a cocktail waitress, whenever the slot girl called in sick or took a vacation, the rest of us had to pick up her station. We never had such things as extras. Now we have girls who are just called in to work an extra shift. Years ago, we just picked everything up because there wasn't that much business there. The Flamingo was acquired from Kirk Kerkorian in the early 70s, and almost from that point on, they started building high-rises. At the point when I started in 69, it was probably 4 stories. Now we must have at least 5 high-rises that go 28 floors. And we had one little swimming pool before, and now we have several swimming pools and lots of bars out there and little restaurants, and the whole pool area is different. In the late 60s, the clientele was mainly adults. It was pretty much adult-oriented. If you saw any children, you saw them sitting in the lobby waiting for one or both of their parents to come out and take them. A very bored look. Occasionally, kids could play in the swimming pool, but that was about it. I think that was the start, maybe Circus, of starting to say, maybe we can attract families. And now I think all casinos are looking to attract the families. There's so many things for the families to do and for children to do, and for people who are under 21 years old, there's a lot of things for them to do. Every casino has something, as well as the whole town has something for the younger set. There's a number of things I miss. I think one is the intimacy of when things are smaller, and when the town was smaller, when there was very little traffic, when the hotels were smaller, when the showrooms, the lounges, the restaurants, everything was smaller. I miss that part of it. Getting to know your customers better, as well as your fellow employees. Right now, the Flamingo probably has over 4,000 employees. There are many people who work at the Flamingo that have been there for years that I've never even seen, because they work different hours and different shifts than I do. When I started, there were probably 800 employees. And I also miss the fact that we don't have big name entertainment. We have production shows. In between their shows, they spend a lot of time in the casino, whether they were eating, or they were having a drink at the bar, or they were gambling, and you could intermingle more with the stars and get to know them more than we do nowadays.
Oh, the Riviera then was a beautiful hotel. It was the first high-rise in Las Vegas, and it was small, 500 rooms, and when you walked in, you could see the whole place. And there was sort of a raised podium in the middle, just in front of the front doors, where they had easy chairs, now lounges, you know, big Davenports, where people could sit and see the whole hotel. And patrons did sit there and watched everybody. Nowadays, you can't find a chair.
It was much smaller. Our clientele was very exclusive. We had a few high rollers then, and we catered to a lot of the movie stars and people with a lot of money. It was a very classy hotel, probably one of the larger ones in 1965.
It was absolutely gorgeous. Everything was so new and so bright and beautiful. And when I think of it now, well, you can walk into a place that's crowded and full of slot machines, and it just isn't the same. Of course, the purpose is different, I guess. But those were beautiful, beautiful days, and the hotel was just gorgeous. And the rooms, they were just beautiful. And their suites were gorgeous.
They remodeled our beautiful casino. We used to have a lot of dark woods, Mediterranean looking. And of course, with changing of time, you had to have an eye in the sky. We had no eye. And so they had to take out all that wood, and we had little twinkling stars up there. All that came down.
Well, looking back, I think those were the glamour days.
Visita mi canal.
Those were such wonderful days because people just went out, and in the casinos, They would all be dressed up in their long gowns, the ladies, and the furs, and the men would have their best clothes on.
Well, most of the shows were not production shows like they are today. All the showrooms had a lineup of showgirls that came on before the star came out. It was usually stars, Dinah Shore, Eddie Fisher, Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra.
Dean Martin was a great celebrity, and he had his own suite of rooms here, so he was here a lot. And he had his own piano bar, and they called Dino's Den, and he ruled there like a king, you know. He was like a king on a throne. He was in front of his grand piano, and he was he had a great personality. He talked to everybody. Everybody loved him, you know. And he sang to the ladies like that was the only woman in his life, and they just came up there and just loved it. Nowadays, I don't think the shows compare, but then, like I said that before, to me, I like the old one. But then I'm an old lady. It makes a difference.
I liked it when it was smaller. I've lived here a long time, and I miss the closeness of knowing most of the people.
We've lost something. That was such a wonderful time to be alive and to experience that.
We missed you at the variety show this year. Last year, Frank was a master of ceremonies for John Wayne's tribute. So last night...
For a big fella.
Yeah, the doll. But Cheryl Ladd told me last night that she got Charlie's Angels off having shown her pilot that we did with her on Policewoman for that. So that was last year's.
Yeah.
But it's a long grind.
Yeah. Remember when we made the picture together? That's a long time ago.
Oh, yeah, I love it.
We made a film together called Ocean's 11, which we did in Las Vegas that time. And that's when you were on the other side of the law. The other outside the law.
I was married to you.
That was a fun movie to make, you know that?
Yes.
You know
Who was I? I was Beatrice, I think.
Yeah, I don't remember your name, but we were married in the picture.
We were married.
We never saw much of each other in the roles itself.
You ran out on me. That's all I remember.
Well, I've been known to do things like that, you know. But you know, after that picture was out for several months, even today, once in a while, I'll run into someone somewhere, and they will say to me, "Couldn't you guys have kept $5,000 out of that instead of burning it all in the casket?" I said, "You can't do that."
It is one of the great endings of any picture. I went to Italy shortly after that, about a year later, and it was called Colpo Grosso over there, and they'd point to me, and they wouldn't say, "Angie, this is Colpo Grosso." Yeah. And although I was in it so very little because it was all of the men doing the robbery, but what fun. The most fun for me, aside from being your wife in a film, was that in the daytime we would shoot, and at night,
we were working at the Sands Hotel, the four of us on stage, 2 shows a night, and shooting all day long.
Yeah, they were. Did you sleep at all?
When we were standing up from time to time, we got a few naps, you know.
But it was so much.
We had a festival every evening too, with the wine and all that stuff was floating around the place.
It was great fun.
It was a marvelous film. Mm-hmm. One of the interesting things about the ending that you mentioned was that Louis Milestone, who directed that film for us, came up with the idea for the ending. Yes, because he went to, I'm not trying to be morbid, but for a minute, let me just say that he went to the funeral of Bora Minovich. And in the temple, they have the crematorium was tied in with the temple. And consequently, in our picture, when the boys began looking at each other, wondering what the noise was in the background, it was the incinerator, actually is what it was. And I said to him, how do you figure that? He said, well, I saw that happen once. And we were shocked because we said, well, while the rabbi was doing all the prayers, you know, they could hear this noise. Consequently, we put it in the picture, which was a marvelous switch. But we buried the money in the casket with the other cat, with Nicky Conti.
And you know, God bless him.
Yeah.
And the looks, though, from one to the other down the line, all of you realizing what was happening is just wonderful.
Then we came back up the aisle the other way. Everybody said, they're burning the casket.
Oh.
It was fun making that picture.
It sure was. It was a great time.
Well, maybe one day you and I can be cops in a movie.
Yeah, where did you keep your badge when you did Cherry Street? Or your gun, I mean.
My gun?
And your Fargo. That's always my problem.
Excuse me 1 minute. We'll be right back. I want to discuss this thing.